Welcome to the deep dive. We are plunging headfirst into a truly fascinating stack of sources today.
Yeah, a collection of classic short stories,
Well,
actually.
exactly.
Yeah.
Full of strange occurrences, altered perceptions, and some seriously unexpected turns of reality.
As the author puts it, it's like stepping through windows into remote and mysterious worlds ruled by an order logical indeed, but other than our common sanity.
I like that description, exploring those places just beyond our everyday understanding.
And these stories are our guide,
Absolutely. So, our mission for this deep dive is simple. Pull out the most compelling nuggets, the surprising facts, the aha moments.
hidden within these imaginative pages. We'll look at how reality gets distorted.
Uh-huh. And encounter some pretty unsettling biological threats.
Oh, yeah. Plus, humans gaining extraordinary abilities, journeys beyond the familiar.
It's a real mix. Get ready to challenge what you think,
Yeah.
see how perception can shift.
And ponder that thin veil between the ordinary and the truly bizarre.
All pulled directly from the pages of these stories, tailored for you.
Okay, so where do we start? Altered perception.
Yeah, let's unpack that right off the bat. Where the world isn't quite what it seems. These sources give us some really vivid examples.
First up, there's this strange account of Gottfried Plattner. Plattner's Other World.
Right, the chemistry lab explosion, something fundamental shifts.
And boom, he finds himself somehow thrust into what the story calls a shadowy other world. Or maybe a fourth dimension.
And the description of this place is, well, genuinely unsettling. It's dark, silent.
Faint greenish glow everywhere.
Yes. And he sees our familiar world, his classroom, Mr. Legit, the students.
But only as these ghostly, sort of phosphorescent specters.
Right, and he can walk through solid walls. He hears these echoing footsteps that aren't his.
And he's really troubled by these chilling, watching souls that actually touch him.
Yeah, it gives me the creeps just thinking about it. He spends 9 days like this, totally cut off.
Just wanting to get back, before somehow mysteriously falling back into our world.
But the fascinating part, the bit that makes you go, is the evidence, right?
Exactly. It's not just in his head. He accurately describes a room in his housekeeper's place he'd never seen before.
And physically, his heart is found to be beating on the right side of his body after he returns.
Which is just bizarre. So was it purely psychological or a genuine, dimensional shift?
That physical detail really grounds the weirdness.
Okay, speaking of strange perceptions, what about Davidson?
Davidson. Touches a magnet and suddenly experiences these incredibly vivid visual phenomena.
Yeah, describe those initial visions. Weren't they underwater?
That's right, incredibly detailed underwater scenes. Glowing fish, luminous sort of glass things.
And the sea surface like a glistening skin. That's such a weirdly specific detail.
It really is. And his companion, Wade, he's just convinced it's a hallucination.
Just something wrong with Davidson's eyes, basically.
Yeah.
Because he's still physically there in the room.
But then it gets really interesting.
Yeah, this is the twist.
Later, Davidson finds he can actually dimly see things, real things, but placed in a specific patch of his vision, like from a huge distance. And the clincher. Details from his so-called hallucination penguins, a whale, certain rocks, they're actually corroborated?
By someone named Atkins, yeah, who was physically on a boat near Antipodes Island, exactly when Davidson was having these visions.
So much for simple hallucinations. It completely pulls the rug out from under Wade's explanation.
It really does. And this uncertainty hallucination, or genuine remote viewing, it leads us perfectly to Mr. Cave.
Mr. Cave and his mysterious crystal egg.
Right. Cave sees visions in this crystal, always from a height, looking over this huge plain.
Reddish cliffs bounding it. And he can see stars at night, which is strange. It gives him a sense of direction within the vision itself.
And the life he sees there, totally alien.
Flying creatures, silvery wings supported by ribs, tentacles.
And these complex, fast-moving metallic mechanisms on some kind of causeway.
Then Mr. Wace, the scientist, gets involved. He confirms the crystal's got unusual properties.
And their theory, straight from the source material, is that the crystal is linked to Mars.
Like a probe, a device sent here for Martian observation.
That's the idea. So looking across these three, Plattner, Davidson, Cave.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Are these just deeply altered individual perceptions, maybe triggered by explosions or magnets or crystals?
Or are they actual fleeting glimpses into other dimensions, distant places, even, alien surveillance?
The line gets incredibly blurry.
And the sources just leave that ambiguity hanging there, which is part of their power, I think.
Definitely. Okay, stepping away from sight and perception for a bit, let's talk about biology.
Right. The unsettling surprises nature can throw at us when it defies expectations.
Yeah, these stories really tap into that fear of the unknown in the natural world.
Take the stolen bacillus. You've got the bacteriologist almost casually showing off a sample of the cholera germ.
And explaining its terrifying potential. If it got into the London water supply, it could decimate the whole metropolis.
Then this pale-faced visitor arrives. Turns out he's an anarchist.
And he has this morbid, almost obsessive fascination with disease germs.
Yeah, it's quite creepy. And the bacteriologist slowly realizes with dawning horror that this guy might have actually stolen the sample.
Cue the desperate, handsome cab chase through London.
And the anarchist's motive is just chilling. He wants revenge because he felt ignored, isolated by society.
He wants to teach them yet what it is to isolate a man, using the germ as his weapon.
It's science twisted for pure malice and chaos, just dark.
Very. Now, a different kind of biological threat, from the Amazon, it seems, judging by the hints.
Holroyd and the new ants.
These aren't just any ants, are they? He describes them as intelligent.
And rapidly dispersing, spreading incredibly fast. They find them covering the body of a dead lieutenant.
Grim. And Holroyd becomes absolutely convinced these are intelligent ants, a significant new threat.
He even worries they could spread as far as British Guiana. It's that fear of something new emerging from nature, something smart and hostile that we can't control.
Primal fear, almost. Then there's the classic Apiornis Island.
Oh, yeah. Butcher, stranded on this island, finds these giant eggs, extinct bird eggs.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
Famous last words.
Well, one hatches, and it's not some cute little chick.
No, it's large, aggressive.
With unnervingly human-like eyes, and it grows almost instantly to full size.
So Butcher's just trapped, fighting for survival against this creature that shouldn't exist. Can't fish, can't hide properly.
It's nature throwing this extinct, monstrous curveball right at him. A biological nightmare.
Definitely a nightmare. And then slightly more subtle, maybe even domestic horror.
The predatory orchid. Wedderburn gets this strange new plant.
And his housekeeper immediately dislikes it, calls it a lump of stuff with things that stick out. Good instincts.
She was right. Because later, Wedderburn is found injured in the hothouse.
Tangled up in the orchid's roots, which are like tentacles.
Attached to his chin, his neck, his hands, sucking the life out of him, apparently.
It's this slow burn predation, a plant turning actively dangerous. So yeah, even biology holds these unexpected, terrifying possibilities in these tales. Exactly. Okay, so from external threats, let's pivot. What happens when humans themselves change? When they gain weird abilities or undergo bizarre transformations?
Right, when the rules for our own bodies and minds just break. This section is full of those disruptions.
Starting with the almost comical absurdity of Mr. Fotheringay.
The man who could work miracles. Just a perfectly ordinary guy.
Bang! Suddenly discovers he can perform miracles. Just by wishing it.
His first tries are almost childish, aren't they? Raising a candle, making a match appear.
Yeah, small stuff. But then he teams up with the local minister, Mr. Maydig, who gets very enthusiastic.
Maybe too enthusiastic. Their thaumaturgy, as they call it, escalates.
From helping people to, well, Maydig's just stopping the moon.
Which sounds completely insane, but Fotheringay actually tries it.
And the result seems to be this massive destructive storm or gale that sweeps the globe.
It's a really striking look at what happens when immense, almost godlike power falls into ordinary, maybe even reckless hands. A very different kind of altered state comes from science, from Gibron's drug in the new accelerator.
Right. This stuff speeds up human perception and action thousands of times.
And the experience, from the narrator's point of view, is wild. The outside world seems frozen solid.
Sounds become this incredibly slow rattle, like a giant clock ticking once a century. Things you drop just hang in the air.
People are frozen mid-stride. A poodle is suspended mid-leap. The wind feels like a slow, steady pressure.
It's such a vivid way to show reality bending based purely on your own internal speed.
And Gibron just impulsively snatches his neighbor's dog while it's frozen in time.
Which shows the disorientation, right? And maybe the weird lack of consequence when normal reality seems paused.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Then we have the strange case of Mr. Pycraft.
Excessively obese Mr. Pycraft, seeking a cure from this peculiar old family recipe.
The narrator is reluctant to even give it to him, sensing something odd.
But Pycraft insists, follows the instructions correctly, and the outcome is, well, bizarre.
He doesn't lose weight in the normal sense. He loses all his mass. His specific gravity.
Becomes incredibly light, floats uncontrollably up to the ceiling.
Described as a mere boring mass.
Mm-hmm.
Mere clouds in clothing. It's funny, but also deeply unsettling.
A fundamental physical property, wait, just gone. It completely changes his existence.
And that story, even with the humor, touches on a really profound idea that pops up elsewhere too.
Which is,
The idea of consciousness being separable from the body,
yeah.
or mutable within the body, that the self isn't fixed to the physical form.
Ah, yes. Which is explored terrifyingly in the story of Elsham.
Right, the young narrator has a drink of powder and liqueur with this old philosopher, Elsham.
And wakes up not in his own body.
No, he wakes up trapped inside Elsham's decaying, aged body, his young mind looking out through failing eyes.
The horror and desperation he feels, it's palpable.
And it becomes clear Elsham's goal was a kind of twisted immortality, swapping his consciousness into younger bodies to live on.
And the source mentions a file labeled release found near the narrator in Elsham's body.
Yeah, speculated to be poison left by Elsham to get rid of the unwanted consciousness now trapped in the old body. Chilling.
Utterly chilling. And this idea that consciousness, perception, even location can be unstable or separable, it echoes in another description too, doesn't it?
Yes, that feeling of falling from midair, seeing the earth recede below.
Experiencing time differently, where impressions feel days apart.
It really feels like a mind detached from its physical grounding, its normal reality.
So from floating men to body swaps, these stories relentlessly poke at that question. What is the self, and how easily can it be detached or altered?
Exactly. Okay, so moving beyond changes within us or our immediate surroundings, what about journeys? Leaving the familiar world behind entirely.
Sometimes the strangeness comes from going somewhere completely new, somewhere isolated.
And the most powerful example has to be the country of the blind.
Definitely. We're taken to this hidden valley. It's people lost their sight generations ago from a disease.
Nunez, the protagonist, accidentally falls into this valley. He discovers this completely isolated community.
Whose entire way of life, their knowledge, their whole reality is built around not having sight.
They navigate their world marvelously, using their other senses. They have complete functioning society.
And Nunez, the outsider who can see, he initially assumes his sight will make him king, their superior.
But it backfires completely. His ability is alien to them, incomprehensible. They think he's the one who's delusional, diseased even.
It's such a masterful exploration of clashing realities, and then he falls in love with Medina Sarodi.
Which leads to the climax. The elders demand he has surgery to remove his eyes to be cured so he can be fully accepted.
It's an incredibly tough choice. Conformity versus individuality. Love versus self.
And ultimately, he chooses his sight. He leaves the valley, choosing the vast, unknown, possibly dangerous outside world over love and acceptance in their limited, peaceful reality. Powerful stuff.
So powerful, a very different kind of journey, maybe more metaphorical, is in The Door in the Wall.
Ah, yes.
Uh-huh.
Wallace and his recurring encounters with that mysterious green door.
Which leads to an enchanted garden, described as a place of pure beauty, joy, immortal reality.
A complete contrast to the demanding, ordinary world Wallace lives in his political career.
But he's dedicated to that career, to worldly ambition. He always resists the garden's pull.
He sees the door again and again, often at moments of stress or decision in his career.
Moments where maybe that garden offered refuge or perspective.
Perhaps, but he always chooses the known world, the path to conventional success.
And the story ends with the mystery of his death, found at the bottom of a construction site, near a door. Did he finally step through?
We don't know, but it leaves you, the listener, wondering, what do we sacrifice for success, for our careers? What wonders might lie just beyond reach, behind a door we choose not to open?
A really poignant question. And finally in this section, the man who dreams of the future.
Right, but he insists it was real, not just a dream.
He describes this initial utopian vision, doesn't he? A beautiful city on Capri, vibrant, full of light, music, love.
Yeah, he'd given up his old life for this seemingly perfect existence.
But then, the descent. Brutal war arrives. Flying machines like spearheads.
He's fleeing, seeing death everywhere, and tragically loses the woman he loves.
So it blends this ideal fantasy of the future with a harsh, violent reality, exploring love, loss, destruction on a grand scale.
These journeys, physical, metaphorical, temporal, they all highlight how different realities can exist, sometimes just alongside our own. and entering them forces profound choices.
Absolutely. Now, these sources aren't just spinning strange tales. They also reflect on storytelling itself, on imagination, creation.
Yeah, there's an interesting excerpt that gives context about the time these were written, the 1890s, a very exciting period for short story writers.
It mentions big influences like Kipling and Barrie and the magazines where these stories appeared, the National Observer, Fortnightly Review, Longman's The Yellow Book.
And it highlights this critical debate back then about what a short story even was.
Some critics saw it as really rigid, like a sonnet, strict rules.
But others, including the author here, saw it more broadly, as just exactly what anyone of courage and imagination can get told in 20 minutes reading or so.
And the stories we've been discussing, floating men, other dimensions, miracle workers, they clearly fit that definition.
Absolutely. Pushing boundaries, using that courage and imagination to explore the bizarre.
Speaking of imagination,
Yeah.
what about that scientific feud, Hapley and Pawkins?
Oh yeah, the rival entomologists. This wasn't just polite disagreement over classifying moths.
Whoa, it was fierce, fought through academic papers with really bitter personal attacks, one calling the other an irresponsible meddler, the other a blundering collector.
It shows how intense human conflict can get, even in seemingly dry fields. But the really fascinating bit is how this external conflict seems to manifest internally for Hapley.
You mean his hallucination, the giant moth?
Exactly. Which he first sees just as a pattern on a tablecloth. It seems directly linked to his rivalry with Pawkins. He even describes the feeling of the hallucination.
As feeling as if it were still a struggle with Pawkins.
Yeah. It's this profound idea. Maybe our deepest conflicts, our rivalries, our internal states, maybe they don't just influence our imagination.
Maybe they actively shape our perceived reality, create the monsters we see.
Could be. It adds another fascinating layer to all those altered perception stories we talked about earlier.
Wow. Okay. What a journey through the strange and unexpected worlds hidden in these pages.
It really has been. We've seen reality bend and distort, encountered bizarre biological threats,
Watched humans gain fantastic powers or undergo unsettling transformations.
and traveled to isolated valleys, maybe future cities, maybe even other dimensions.
These stories, born from that era of courage and imagination in short fiction, they really do challenge our common sanity.
They invite us to consider what's truly possible, or maybe what's already happening, just outside our normal perception.
And they use those incredible specific details to make it all feel so real, don't they?
Totally. The glistening sea skin, the human-eyed birds, intelligent ants, floating men, those terrifying moths, reddish cliffs, phosphorescent specters. It makes the impossible feel unsettlingly plausible.
This deep dive really is a shortcut to getting your head around some unique foundational concepts in classic imaginative fiction.
Leaves us asking how much of what we call solid reality is just one specific, order logical indeed, but other than our common sanity.
What surprising facts might be lurking just beneath the surface of everyday life, just waiting? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into these extraordinary tales.
Yeah, reflecting on all of it, from minds split from bodies and those creepy human-eyed birds.
To hidden dimensions seen in crystals and the terrifying results of wishing for miracles.
Here's a final thought for you to mull over.
If the world we perceive is so easily altered by drugs, magnets, explosions, our own internal feuds, or even just choosing to step through a hidden door,
Then how much of what we call reality is actually fixed? And how much is simply waiting for us to perceive it differently?
maybe just a thought or a step away